Do you smell that? Are those spoilers? What's up, guys? They go the pencil here, and I'm gonna be featured with a massive echo. I'm so sorry. Would it really be like that? Would it be like that? Especially when it be like that. And this is one of those times when it do be like that. I must apologize. I'm not currently in my typical recording location. And while I could put a blanket over myself, I will literally combust. So, my apologies. Also, the audio quality will be poor because I do not have my microphone with me. Also, my apologies. But we have spoilers. In fact, we have super fancy spoilers. So fancy that I'm actually a little bit scared. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Editing me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do have a pencil. Have it on me. And keep it on me at all times. Don't ask what this book is. I swear it's not any sort of note of any kind. What would that be the case? We have the spoilers for chapter 100, or no, not 100, 266 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as the Decisive Battle in the Uninhabited Demon Forest Shinjuku Part 37. I was really hoping we would stick with like the new chapter name motifs, especially considering the end of this chapter does imply that we're reaching the climax. But I suppose it is the climax of the Shinjuku Showdown, so it makes sense going back to the Shinjuku Showdown. It's just that that day gave me a whole lot of hope. It looks like that hope was poorly placed. However, like I said, these are unique spoilers because of how late these came out. I didn't even get to see the raws. I did have these, like these super duper rough translations. I will do like a proper breakdown of like TCBs when they come out because I wasn't able to find those. So we're in an interesting spot here. Once again, I'm going to put a quick little time limit on myself because there is a whole bunch to cover. But since I already burned like the first minute of that, I'm going to do a 14-minute time limit. So let's hop into the chapter itself. So we open up with a discussion between Itadori and what remains or what is of Megami's soul. Notably, Megami's soul is still presumably sunk into the depths, and that hasn't changed since the situation all the way back in Yudakotsu's domain over 20 chapters ago at this point. Maybe not 20. I think maybe highballing when I say 20. Like maybe 10 plus chapters ago. And we see that Yuji Itadori is just listening to Megami, right? Because that's the big thing that was different when they were first talking way back when. Yuji and Yuta were kind of just hoping Megami would be there, hand extended. So as long as they extended their hand back, they could dap him up, pull him out, and then save him. Hallelujah. But unfortunately, the situation was much more complicated than that. They had no way of knowing that his soul was sunk into the depths. They had no way of knowing about Samuki. But Yuji Itadori is finally here to listen, finally here to understand, finally here to hear the fragments of memory that have led Megami Fushiguro to this point where he supposedly doesn't want to live. And we see with that being the case, ultimately, Megami kind of just wanted to have a world where he was free. Free for Samuki, free for Itadori, free of all the baggage and disgusting nature of the world about them. He just wanted freedom. Ultimately, he wanted to enjoy those blissful moments. Be with the people he cared about. Whether it be eating the same meals, watching the laundry drying, he wanted to just live a life of peace. Now, of course, being born in an accursed system, he could never have that. And obviously with the loss of Samuki and the suffering of Itadori, and notably a big mention that goes kind of unmentioned, which once again has me believe that Megami hasn't really been conscious since the loss of Samuki, he doesn't mention Gojo at all. Which is a big detractor to a lot of people who thought that Gojo and Megami had a much deeper relationship than what was implied initially. The benefactor idea, I know a lot of people were hoping for more, but with Gojo's abject lack of mention in this chapter up until a later point where something happens, which I also feel a little bit mixed on, but I'll talk about that more in the long review or the long spoiler discussion. This is sad and poignant in the perfect way, at least in my opinion, for Megami's character. Because a lot of people, myself included, have always found Megami a bit boring. He only started to become interesting the moment he started to fall away from himself towards the end of his match, or really at the start of his match in the Killing Games, when he was willing to fall into darkness for Samuki, and then Samuki's image peeled him back. But now, with the recontextualization of that boring exterior being revealed to be, no, it was purposeful. He was boring for the fact that he wanted to live a boring life because he knew the world that he was born into was something far from that. It's sad and it's tragic. And it's a way that Gege flipped Megami's more, at least in my opinion, boring characterization in a way that I wasn't expecting. So I'll give Gege credit for that. Typically when I don't like a character or I find them boring, they're kind of just stuck there forever. But not only did Gege flip it with Megumi's characterization in the Culling games, but also here in revealing what it was meant to be. And I like that. And we do get to see that ultimately, Yuji Tadori explains that he kind of understands it now. Notably, considering he doesn't believe that a person is defined by their death, he never really wanted anyone else's to be. In fact, he always wanted to have we want people to have a good death instead of just being defined by it. But now he understands. He feels that he was never really able to with the situation of his own grandfather and bring up the ideas of euthanasia and painkillers and suppressing or rejecting certain things because he was always physically strong. He never understood that idea. But now that he's gone through it, where his own physical strength has proved to not be enough in the many battles with Sukuna, with Mahito, with Kenjaku, with the many traumas and disgusting despair that Yuji Tadori has faced, he finally understands it. And he comes to a sad but ultimately human conclusion now that he's experienced it. He can't force Megumi to want to live. He can't force Megumi to be saved. Ultimately, it's weird to say. He's simultaneously somewhat given up on Megumi, yet also accepted what Megumi wants. That's essentially what Megumi's said upon the first rejection of Yuji's reached out hand. He said, I want to go. I messed up. I'm done. There's nothing I can do about this. But where Yuji at first was in denial, he's like, fine, you don't want to come. I'm not going to make you. If this is what will make you happy, I'm sorry. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to force you to keep living. And we see Sukuna, once again, just barely struggling to maintain himself, activate Hollow Wicker Basket. And admittedly, this does kind of hurt me because I really want to see Sukuna fight with all four arms, especially since he got his RCT back. But of course, he immediately needs the Hollow Wicker Basket, so I do get it. But gosh darn it, it hurts a little bit. But with that being the case, he does Hollow Wicker Basket, and Yuji and Sukuna face off. Notably, Sukuna does toy with the idea of refreshing his RCT output or refreshing his own domain through RCT in the same way that Gojo did. But I don't like that it's set. And once again, this is something I want to see if it's in the official translations and in the TCB translations. The method developed by Santoro Gojo of destroying and restoring the brain and resetting the burnt out techniques. I don't like that Sukuna says that Santoro Gojo came up with that. I mean, it's fine. And it plays into the idea that Sukuna copies everything he sees on the first try. But I always thought, by the way he explained it, that he knew. Like, he encountered someone who had did it before. By saying Gojo came up with it and Sukuna just copied the technique, it kind of lowers Sukuna's status as one of the smartest, if not the strongest sorcerer. Because he had to take a technique, even though he was... Like, I get it, maybe he just took it and was able to explain the properties of what was wrong with the basis of the technique. But it still feels weird. I don't know. I don't like how... in a retroactive way, I mean, I guess it's fine because it makes Gojo better. And I'm fine with Gojo being better, but it kind of makes Sukuna seem worse because then he was kind of talking out his butt because he came up with it on the spot rather than having seen it before or done it himself before or something. So I'm kind of iffy on that, but still he decides not to do it because his brain is still damaged itself by Limited Void. And sure, he'd be healing his brain to remap to his new type of domain expansion opening, and we even see later on in the chapter, despite having the necessary hints to do the original Malevolent Shrine, he never loses them again in this chapter. He very specifically still goes for the remap domain, which means even after doing what he does later, he does believe that the Unlimited Void damage was that strong, that even still going back to the old way of trying to open a domain may actually still cause him brain damage in his eyes to leak again, which is good. Once again, I am glad Gojo's having longer and longer and longer lasting effects. Though admittedly, in universe, Gojo probably died like 30 minutes ago. It hasn't really been that long. But with it being the case, we see Yuji and Sukuna. Let me see if I can get to the chat a little bit faster. They immediately... So many things are confirmed and once again, weirdly confirmed or deconfirmed. Once again, I need to see the real translations versus these translations of the TCBs versus in the officials. But ultimately, Hollow Wicker Basket gets a buff. You don't need to hold it. It's just that if you don't hold it, then it'll be ate away like every other domain. So hypothetically, characters like Kashimo and characters like Reggie and any ancient era sorcerer who uses Hollow Wicker Basket, they don't have to hold it, which opens up arms and changes a bunch of matchups. For the longest time, the Kashimo versus Yuta matchup was decided by the fact that if Yuta opens domain, Kashimo's cooked because he'd immediately get hit by Jacob's Ladder and immediately atomize unless he's holding this and then he can't fight back without his hands, right? But apparently, as long as Kashimo can keep forcefully resetting and then going back, you can combat. So Hollow Wicker Basket did just get a decent buff. Shout out to that. Now I'd say it would be better than Simple Domain. Because notably, unless you're Kusakabe, you need to hold the Simple Domain stance. And then if you're a high tier sorcerer like Yuki or Gojo, it seems like those will still decay at a pretty decent rate. So maybe they're just even now. I want to say we haven't seen enough single domain usage to really declare it better than Hollow Worker Basket, but I feel like Hollow Worker Basket did get a buff here, which is nice. I mean, I'm down for the ancient techniques still having viability. And we see Yuji and Sukuna start going hand to hand to hand. Yuji does something interesting with the gauntlets for the first time in like forever and jabs Sukuna in the thigh with them. Once again, Sukuna's output of RCT is restored fully, so it doesn't really matter too much. But these two are fully down to straight fisticuffs. Notably, a detail that I love is that neither of them are actually using their curse technique here. Like, notably, Yuji doesn't go for any cleaves. He doesn't go for any soul dismantles. This is just straight slobber knocking. Once again, like I said, I would like it if the slobber knocking included Sukuna's forearms rather than just, you know, peeling them away. But A, it'd be like that, would it be like that? Especially when it'd be like that, you got to make some sacrifices, and a sacrifice is a sacrifice. And obviously, Sukuna would dominate Yuji if he still had access to all four of his arms. Sukuna is still a really, really good hand-to-hand fighter, and Yuji would simply lose. So I get limiting Sukuna. But with that being the case, Sukuna even still shows off some dominance. And one thing I do like is that Sukuna ultimately acknowledges that, yeah, Yuji did get to him fully here. Like, dude, you actually managed to make me angry. That's crazy, little bro. I have to beat your behind for that. And he's ultimately, he says something interesting. I'm thrilled at the thought of making someone other than you make amends for this. Ultimately, it's Sukuna simultaneously acknowledging Yuji as a person, but still not acknowledging Yuji as a person. He's excited that he was actually able to feel something so deeply furious, but he doesn't like that it was Yuji who did it, so he's going to make someone else pay for it. And that comes back to the idea that he mentioned at the end of 265, the idea that he's going to make Yuji watch as he slaughters every last person. Of course, he said he was going to remove Yuji's head, which would execute him naturally, but presumably he would break out of this domain and then go over to Toto and remove his head, go over to Hana, remove her head, and then one by one hunt down every single person, dragging Yuji along by his hair and just making him watch, making Yuji pay for daring to insult him in such a way. And with that being the case, we see that Yuji is put in a position that finally wakes Megami up. As a young Megami, in a very beautiful callback to the Gojo scene, ironically enough, sees that Yuji's sad, as he admits, it won't be as lively with you being gone, Megami. And that Yuji essentially telling Megami, dude, you're on the chopping block. We aren't waiting anymore. And with that being the case, Megami finally awakens, if only subconsciously. He drags Sukuna into the shadow. The depths that Megami is locked in, he finally drags Sukuna down into, and that allows Yuji to get a punch off. And with that punch being clean, he notices that ultimately Megami Fushiguro has decided to live. One way or another, he no longer has to give up on his friend. He doesn't have to tell him or force him to keep living. No, Megami Fushiguro has risen in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, it's still going to take more soul dismantles. Obviously, it's still going to take more soul punches. But still, now we're to a point where Yuji is fighting for a confirmed cause rather than the vagueness of what existed before. And with that being the case, they go in for more intense combat. Both have this beautiful moment where they're fighting in the snowfield, kicking up dirt, or kicking up snow, and they both grab each other's head and just swing with all the malice they can muster. The pure hatred between these two characters surmised perfectly in this beautiful panel of both of them trying to grind each other to dust. And with that being the case, every single punch weakens Sukuna, as every single punch just drives Yuji forward. And we see that Yuji ultimately does have the upper hand at this point. And now, this is something. For every single person, once again, I'll see if the TCB say the same, if the official translations say the same. I'll be more than ready to admit y'all were right, I was wrong. It looks like Yuji's punches are finally confirmed to have real, actual soul damage. As expected, the brat's blows have effects that cannot be countered by reversal techniques. The Hollow Worker Basket is. So, I'm not sure if this is meant to say that Yuji has soul damage, or this is just further pointing out that Yuji's punches still have the soul barrier attacking effect and not just soul damage. Based on what it mentions, the reversal techniques, I assume, is Hollow Worker Basket, considering that's what he mentioned. So Hollow Worker Basket getting broken through means that Yuji's still having the barrier effects, not the soul damage effects, but I've seen people talking as if this is confirmation for soul damage. If it is, hallelujah, Yuji gets soul damage. We can finally start putting concretely above some characters. If it isn't, womp womp, it's still the same. Regardless, I think Yuji's still extremely powerful. But with it being the case, we see that Sukuna has finally decided that now it's going to be now or never. He's going to risk it all. And Slash has come to shatter Yuji's gauntlet. So we never got an explanation for where these curse tools came from, what they were, but they are not a part of Yuji's biology. So these are confirmed to be cursed tools, cursed gauntlets, and we see, and I don't, you know what, I will say this, it is mad weird that these cursed gauntlets go completely unnamed, completely unacknowledged, and are as durable as they were. They took no damage throughout the entire fight. Go back, correct me if I'm wrong. These gauntlets never took any damage. What were they made out of, and where did Yuji get them? Did you just have these? Where did you get them? These being as bulky as they were is crazy, but it leads to a fantastic reveal. I have 1 minute left. It leads to a fantastic reveal that ultimately Sukuna did restore his brain he restored his domain expansion with reverse curse technique. He goes for the remap domain, but then he notices that Yuji's missing 2 fingers. Now, this means that the pinky finger that Yuji lost all the way back before he learned RCT is gone. But that makes sense. Sukuna ripped off that pinky in order to feed it to Megami in order to transfer his soul over. But that also means that Rika didn't get Shrine from Sukuna's finger, as Sukuna assumed and Yuta implied. No, Shrine was taken from Yuji. And then Cleave was given to Yuta through that. The real finger is still in play, sealed deep in the depths. Now, obviously this leads to one thing. No Barocopium. So I'll talk about that more in depth because I only have 11 seconds, but overall, an amazingly amazing W chapter. Chapter's worth it. This is all. I'm sorry. I'm nowhere near my regular set. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown. I'll see you in the longer breakdown. There's so many more things I'm gonna talk about. I was trying to like summarize and get real thoughts out. But thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave finger licking good in the comment section down below. And thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure the notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon below where you can support me for as low as $1 month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. And so now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month and get the same perks and more. So those perks will include the live reaction to this very chapter, add free variations of all my videos, and become a $25 Patreon or a $25 member. You can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below where you can drop 5 beans for a short video, 25 beans for a long video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Zach with the Pencil, writing off.
I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Zera, Greyhound, Eternal Flame, NMA, Real Rare, Redwolf 4765, Paris Arnold, Astro, and Brandon Payne. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons, Zombie Hunter, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, King, Meliodas, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 members, Autumn Mornings Lazo, and Fine. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members, Robbie Uchiha, Jay Warrior, and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons, Michael Williamson, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.